welcome to Think It's All Sober, Catherine Gray.
Hi.
How are you?
Thanks for having me. I'm good.
Good. You've
Really
walked
good.
into chaos, we must say. So for full disclosure, we have just done our European Championships where Tom and I tried 24 zeros and you walked into the tail end of it and it has been nothing short of madness. So
It's a bit like walking into the day after a house party.
Yeah.
Where there's just like half empty
24
beer
bottles of beer, random blueberries.
I hope it wasn't triggering.
PTSD. But no, thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, it's a pleasure.
I feel like it's an honour to have you on the podcast. I kind of feel like you're like, well, we've said it. I said Millie was the Obi-Wan Kenobi. I feel like you're the Yoda of the almost of the in the Star Wars analogy in the sober space, and like, you know, I think have had like a massive influence and impact on a lot of people's lives. So yes, honoured to have you on, and
Thank you.
we are going to be talking about your new book as well, which is very exciting, which we'll come into in the sort of
We shall.
latter part of this. But yeah, how are you?
I'm good, yeah. I'm very happy to be here, being the Yoda. I love that. I'm going to have to steal that, put it on one of the books.
The Yoda of sobriety.
Tom Hollings.
I'm going to have to start speaking like Yoda as well, obviously.
Amazing. But things been going really well for you?
Yeah, things are good, man. I'm 10 years sober now. Can't actually
Wow.
Yes,
believe it.
double digits.
Yeah, streaking towards 11.
Congrats.
That'll be later this year. And couldn't be happier. I'm living down by the sea. I've got a little toddler. She's almost 2. I'm engaged. I'm living a very suburban life. I've got a white picket fence.
And look at that.
Oh,
Look
I
at
know
that.
all
Far
my
cry from the
neighbours.
streets of Hackney, hey?
We were just talking about that because 20 years ago when I first moved to London, I moved around these parts and this was my old stomping ground, and
Right.
some absolute carnage went down around here.
We've really we've brought you back to the scene of the crime and then brought you into a room just filled with beer bottles and the stench of lager. I'm so sorry.
It's a good job it's been 10 years. That's all I can say. Otherwise, I'd be rocking.
That event tonight, you'd be like, that Catherine's fucked up.
Yeah, we made Catherine Gray relapse.
Oh, God.
well, it sounds like
Welcome.
welcome.
Straight in there.
Yeah, straight in there. But no, it sounds like life is good. I mean, what you just described is almost like picture book life material, isn't it? You know, I think living the, you know, having how are you finding parenthood?
Oh, it's so challenging. Well, you know, but it's so beautiful as well. But it tests you. Oh my God, does it test you? Like the overwhelm, the tiredness, the boundaries you have to place with other people. It's just so tough, but so gorgeous. And I'm so glad that I did it. And I did it late, you know. I was 42 when I had her. So I didn't really think I was going to have a kid, and spent most of my 30s not wanting kids.
Right.
But we can come back to that later because that's to do with the book.
Yeah,
But,
let's tackle that later. I promise.
I'm so happy that I have because I love it.
Amazing. Well, I think it's time to dive into my wonderful time machine.
I think we should, yeah, because time is against us, and we're gonna do this.
Time is
properly.
against us in life, Tom. We're all hurtling towards an inevitable death.
This is true. You know.
The time machine may protect us from that. But what we like to do in the podcast is kind of take our listeners on a journey through our guests' relationship with alcohol.
Yeah.
And we found a lot of podcasts would always be like, why did you quit drinking? And that'd be the first question. And we always like to kind of give a scope of what someone's life was like growing up, what alcohol was, you know, like around them. Was it a positive memory, a negative memory? So if you'd be happy to step into my time machine.
Yeah,
we'll start
let's do
there.
it.
Let's do it.
You're ready?
Let's
I've
go.
never done the time machine from this side of the room. I usually sit where you're sat, Catherine. So this is a new experience for me.
This is new for
Okay.
me as well.
Time machine might take us forward. Being here. Right. Oh, we're ready. I do you.
And we're back. We're back to young Catherine. And what were your first memories of alcohol growing up?
My first memories of alcohol. So my dad was addicted to alcohol. When he died, which was maybe 7 years ago now, he
Right.
was 23 years sober.
Oh, wow.
When I was growing up, I had this impression that when he was drinking, he was really happy and loving. And when he was sober, he was really annoyed and angry.
Right.
Because he was sort of going through a period where he was sort of quitting, starting again, quitting, starting again. So obviously that was arduous. And so that left me with an impression that drinking was amazing and sobriety sucked. So that wasn't great. And also I'm fully Irish, even though I sound like I've never set foot in Ireland. I literally was born there to Irish parents and lived there till I was 10, but
Oh,
then
wow.
I moved to the West Midlands. And Irish culture, anyone who's Irish will know, it's so boozy.
Producer G.
Oh, really? Gee. So,
Yeah.
like if you show up at anyone's house, if it's after 11 a.m., you'll be offered a tot, like a wee tot, which is a little drink. And it's something that is so ingrained in the culture, even more than it is, British culture. Ireland, it's just there, like always. So I just equated it with relaxation, socializing, family time. Like whenever we got together as a family, there was always booze. So yeah, I grew up, I couldn't wait to drink. Couldn't wait.
It's really interesting, and obviously you don't have to deep dive into this, but I think a lot of people that have grown up with addict parents, I did, but I was very aware of like hospitalization and like the negativity around it. So it's quite an interesting perspective, and one I'm not sure we've had actually, where a child has seen, or maybe not understood addiction, and seen the parent in what is deemed a happy place, and thus alcohol or substance is seen as like a positive in that environment.
Yeah, I mean, I remember really clearly that my dad described being sober as like having a stone in his shoe, like that, because the way that he got sober was very different to the way I approach it. He saw himself as always craving it, even when he was like 2 decades sober.
Wow.
I don't see it that way, and I've never approached it that way, but that really stayed with me, and I was like, oh my God, I need to make sure that I never get that stone in my shoe, because that must be so uncomfortable. But then looking back, I sort of edited. There was times when he talked about the joys of sobriety as well. It's just that I chose not to listen to it, because by then I was a teenager and I'd started drinking really young. I started drinking when I was 12. So, I wanted to crack on.
That's interesting. So talk us through like 12-year-old drinking. How did it show itself?
Well, I was given it at a family party.
Right.
So I was given Alka-Pops, and the first time I drank, I gave myself alcoholic poisoning. Like I was vomiting, but I couldn't wait to do it again. I was already in love with it, because I had that ever-present anxiety that is just part and parcel of adolescence, and it removed it. And I was like, well, this is the answer. This is how I'm gonna, go to parties and talk to boys and dance and do whatever I want to do that I can't do because I feel like pinned to the wall by my introversion and anxiety. This is the magic solution. I'm just going to get shit-faced.
That's really interesting, because I think it's the same as David, our I suppose resident psychotherapist, had a very similar take. I think he said it was 12, 13, and I think he started drinking like his dad's like stubby beers.
Yeah.
And it's the very same thing. He said, as a sort of early teen, had all this anxiety and all this stuff, and suddenly he found this tool that alleviated all of that. And was like, oh wow, like I can go and talk to girls and do that rather than be like awkward and in the corner. So it's interesting drawing those kind of like parallels, I suppose.
I was going to ask about the function of it at that point, because I think sometimes you think about that first experience of alcohol on paper is really bad for you, right? You give yourself poisoning, but you wanted to do it again. Yeah. So did it give you more than even the worst outcome was? Like, how did you feel the next day, and were you told off, or like what was it feeling like at that point?
Well, I remember just being sort of nursed through the aftermath of it, so that was quite nice. Like having my hair stroked and being brought like crackers and bananas or whatever. So I enjoyed that, but yeah, I mean, for me, the fact that it unlocked me from my self-consciousness was absolutely worth the vomiting. And I just told myself that it was a rough start and that I'd get used to it, and I did. I actually didn't really then get hangovers until I went to university and started hitting it really, really hard. But yeah, it was just, it's something that, so did you know, if people start drinking before the age of 15, I hope I'm not misquoting this, they are 5 times more likely to grow up to be addicted.
Wow.
And I think the reason is that you're medicating that adolescent stage, you're manufacturing fake confidence through alcohol, whereas you would have learned how to do those things, how to socialize without it. But I didn't do that. I just lent on alcohol. And I went clubbing really young as well. I went clubbing when I was 13. I don't know how.
I was about to say, what the
Fair
hell?
play. That's like
13.
It's quite impressive that anyone
Yeah,
let you in. Like,
But it was Wolverhampton, and all my friends were
Right.
older, and they just sort of put me in the middle and dressed me up in their clothes and did my makeup, and
Wow.
I had a nose stud, and I looked older than I was.
Yeah.
So I was in it, like I was hanging around with drug dealers when I was 14, 15 in Wolverhampton. It was a miracle that I got through those days. I once slept in the middle of a roundabout. So I missed.
Did it feel unsafe for you at the time, or was it just really fun and exciting, and there's this really confident Catherine?
It felt fun and exciting, and even now I look back and those days were really fun.
Yeah.
Like me and my mates were out on the town having a brilliant time, and you know, the drug dealers were actually really nice guys. not now, like looking back, they shouldn't have been hanging around with, kids, which is what we were. But they never mistreated us or anything like that, and it was an absolute blast at the time. But obviously I don't want my daughter doing that, so I'm
not going to Wolverhampton ever.
Never going to Wolverhampton.
that's my deepest fear as a parent, is that Zach will like emulate any of the shit that I did when I was a teen. And
Same.
I'm just really praying that, like, because Sarah, my wife, is so like down the middle, very sensible, has never has smoked, but has never like touched a drug or anything else. So I'm hoping that like there's a nice middle ground, or slightly leaning towards her, that like but I don't know. I'm starting
I've
to
met
see
your
his-
son.
Yeah. he's
To be fair though, he's a bundle of energy. Like he's like, I will say coked up. He's obviously not coked up. He's a child, but he's got the energy of he's like so frantic now. So I reckon maybe he'll just keep that energy through life.
Yeah.
We'll see. But
It feels like we have to get onto that then, the whole genetics thing. So I really want to talk about that. That's one of the reasons I didn't have a kid until so late, because I was so scared of that. And I've done a lot of research into it, right? And here is how it works. You don't actually inherit addiction. It's not genetic. But what you inherit is characteristics that are predispositions to addiction.
Right.
So things like anxiety, introversion, impulsivity, which basically describes me, like an anxious, impulsive introvert.
Tick, tick, tick.
But the thing that activates it is the home environment.
Mm-hmm.
And if you have a really stable, safe, happy home environment, then the addiction doesn't get activated. So that was really, really beautiful for me to learn. So maybe that's of comfort to you.
yeah, that definitely is of comfort, because, having grown up around, within the home of addiction around, I guess it was never something on the forefront of certainly my mind. And I think my class mentality is probably very similar to a lot of people, where you think that probably won't happen to me.
Yeah.
And suddenly life happens and you're like, oh shit, how am I hitting it this hard? I said I'd never do this. And you're like, oh shit. But I think I don't know, probably discussion points for when people are old enough to see. And, I've got 2 older stepchildren as well, who I'm like now have explained, and they've seen me go through like stuff and the changes, and seen a lot of positivity through sobriety. So I think we'll see what happens. It's a long road ahead.
Time will tell.
Yeah.
But so teen drinking for you, it was fun, it was exciting, even through like the throwing up and sleeping on roundabouts. And then
Yeah.
you go to university and hit it harder.
Yeah, that's when it really started to get dark for me, because I didn't have that I had a really strong group of friends and we all looked after each other. And at university, I didn't have that. I was sort of thrown into, a social thing where I didn't have any friends. And I made friends, but it just became a lot darker. I started drinking on my own. I started getting really savage hangovers. I barely went to uni. I literally, I reckon I went to about 30 lectures. Do not know how I got a degree. And that's when it got really bad for me. But then I managed to sort of pull it back when I moved to London and started working in magazines for a while. And
Right.
then it got darker again.
Did you feel at that time you were aware of the darkness? Because some of our guests will be like, yeah, I didn't notice it, and then boom, I was an addict. Or some people go, it was there, but I needed alcohol or substances to kind of pull myself out. Where were you on that kind of spectrum of awareness?
I think I first became aware of it at university, but I thought I'll be able to outwit it like I'll be able to figure it out. You know, I can do this. I'll just apply myself to outrunning addiction and not becoming like my father. And yeah, that didn't happen. I couldn't outrun it and I couldn't outwit it, and it came to get me in the end.
It's almost like a certain level of denial, I guess.
Yeah, I think so. But there's patches where you manage to do it. You manage to have 2 drinks and go home and you're like, oh, huh.
I am Mrs. Moderator.
Yeah.
I can moderate.
Hello.
It's an interesting premise that though, because I was having a conversation with a friend who's been in and out of AA for the last 3 or 4 years, and he was in one of his sort of like was drinking again phases, and he was like, look, I can control it. I can just have a few drinks. And then sort of 2 weeks later rang me and was like, no, this is it. I'm doing it for good this time. And it's interesting to hear that. I do think the brain constantly convinces you that you can outrun whatever it is you're running from. Because ultimately I do feel like in addictive cycles we are running from something. Sometimes you've got to turn around and be like, fucking come on then. And like face it head on.
Josh, Sam.
Yeah, come on, that's why I'm wearing the Stone Island today. Ready for it. So then you moved down to London, which was obviously far cry from the Midlands. Was that another sort of downhill on your own? Did you know people, and how did drink and magazine culture and media culture, and how did that all fit into your journey?
Well, it's very similar to the music industry, isn't it? It's like free booze all the time if you want it, and I wanted it. So I had it, and I worked at Cosmopolitan and was invited to parties every night. So it was very, very easy to drink for free and do drugs for free as well. I wasn't massively into drugs, but I did them a number of times. And yeah, it just got worse and worse. And then the time when most people would have quit, I was 27 and I got arrested for being drunk and disorderly in Brixton.
Wow.
After a free drinks party, a works party. And I just moved to this place. I'd only lived there 3 months. I couldn't remember my address. The taxi driver just sort of kicked me out on Brixton Hill. I was like, I know it's here, around here somewhere. And I don't remember the next bit, but I was told by the police. So a police officer tried to help me home, and I told her to F off. And at that point, they arrested me and put me in the tank for the night. And the next morning, I woke up and I was like, where the hell am I? Like, is this some sort of brutalist hotel? Because I'd woken up in many hotels.
Where's my duvet?
yeah, come on. I was just like, this is a hotel for wankers. This is a really minimalist hotel.
Where's my door locked?
And yeah, it was such a dark moment. And then I just sort of, the ego came back out and the entitlement. And whenever I was leaving, they were like, oh, we'll just go and get your belongings. And I was like, thank God I've still got some stuff. And then he handed me this plastic bag. And the only thing that I'd had on me when they'd arrested me was this tiny pink child's hairbrush that I'd never seen before in my life. And I must have picked up off some like bathroom floor or something in a nightclub.
I'll need this. I'll use this to break out of prison.
I shall brush my hair in prison. But it was just, and I remember asking at the police station for an email address to make a complaint. Because I was just, I was still in that complete cocky, arrogant 20-something thing where you think that nothing's your fault. And I was like, oh, it's the fault of the free drinks, it's the fault of the police, it's the fault of the taxi driver, it's the fault of everyone but me, because I can't confront what has actually happened and what I've been responsible for. And I continued to drink for another 6 years after that, so it had absolutely no effect.
Wow. Interesting, because like we both, I think, have similar journeys of like having a moment that clearly wasn't okay.
Yeah.
And still continuing to drink for 4-5 years afterwards. What do you think that is? Just not necessarily for you personally, but just in life, because that should be, let's be honest, like a bit of an eye-opening moment, right?
Yeah. Well, I think what happens is, so in the movies that you watch about people's rock bottoms, it's always some really dramatic scene, right? It's Denzel Washington like flying a plane when he's drunk, or it's somebody ruining. It's such a good film. It's somebody ruining their sister's wedding, or it's something very visible, like public and humiliating. And I didn't find that my rock bottom was like that. It was completely internal and invisible to the naked eye, and nobody knew about it but me. And I think that most people's rock bottoms are like that. I don't believe in one rock bottom. I would say like I had hundreds of rock bottoms, but I think that's what it is. We sort of think that that's going to be the thing that stops us, is some sort of external consequence, and that can't be it. That can't be what triggers it. It always has to come from you. You have to be like, I don't want to do that anymore. That, like, something is shifted inside where I don't want to do it more than I want to do it. It's just that absolutely tiny, like 0.01% of a shift inside you, and that's what tips you into trying for day ones, and which is also like a long journey. It takes a long time to stick.
Well, that's a really nice way of putting it.
I was going to say, it's interesting what you said about like that being, you know, I guess a drink related thing that happened, getting arrested, and then, you know, drinking for like another 6 years. And we always talk about the good, the bad, the ugly of the journey. Generally, for most people, seems to take that pattern. And it's the same with us. Like there's moments where I was very aware that, you know, it was alcohol was the cause behind the same, you know, getting arrested. That's happened before, like for a breakdown of a relationship, for, you know, getting into trouble with mates and fighting and doing stupid shit. And I could identify that was the root and the cause of it. But very similar, it probably took me, I don't know, another 6 or 7 years of like repeating that behavior for me to go, should we just stop now? Like, and you said the same, like, you know, probably a good, you know,
mine was like 5 years, but I was like, I completely relate to that, like, introversion of, I just woke up one morning and was like, this has to stop now, or I'm not going to be around much longer. And I think when the 0.1% thing you said is really interesting, because like that, it is that granular. There's just that tiny little tipping point on the scales. And that's the beautiful thing, I think, with sobriety, is that it can be just a micro movement. It doesn't have to be like waking up naked in the middle of nowhere. Like, it can be something so my actually last day of drinking wasn't that heavy. I just knew that I was coming, it felt like I was coming to the end of a tale, and then the next morning was like, nah, you know. And that 0.1% is a really nice way of saying it, I think.
That's all you need, people.
That is. And let's talk about the run up until, you know, until when you did stop. Were things like progressively getting worse, or was it just, you know, sustained period of you being, you know, drinking too much and then just calling it a day? What was the kind of tipping point for you?
Well, so there was another like watershed moment when I was 29. I had on paper my ideal life. I was living in a beautiful flat with my best mate. I had a long-term partner who I adored. We were planning to get married. And I also had like the dream job at Glamour magazine. And I was so miserable. And I was absolutely terrified that I was going to lose these 3 things, because I couldn't stop kissing people that weren't my boyfriend, getting completely hammered on weeknights and then calling in sick the next day, and being an unreasonable bitch to my best mate. So I was like, I need to stop this. I need to get control of this. So I started this sort of, I called it Operation Moderation.
Right.
So cringe.
No.
TM, that one.
No. And it was like, I've still got it. It's this golden notebook. And I started trying to drink under 30 units a week, which is 3 bottles of wine. Because under 14 units, which was the recommended cutoff, was unthinkable. I was like, as if that's going to happen. That's a bottle and a half of wine. I can do that in a night. Like, come on. So I decided to double that and go for 30 units. And I couldn't even do that. It was so depressing, the experiment. I kept a unit diary and I kept fudging, you know, when you do some creative accounting and you're like, but come on, what was that really a large glass of wine? That felt like more like a small glass of wine.
Right.
And I tried everything. I tried going to the gym before I went to the pub. I tried going out with different mates. I tried like banning the free drinks parties. I tried switching my drink. I tried drinking water in between. Tried all the things that all of us try when we're trying to moderate, and none of it worked. So that led to, when I was 30, being dumped, losing my job and going freelance, and having to move back in with my parents, so losing the flat with my best mate as well. And that started 3 years of very, very dark drinking, where I was definitely drinking to sort of medicate my pain. And I was still going out, but actually I started staying in a lot more, which is another common experience when people like reach the end of their drinking, because it started getting to the point where I was scared to go out because I did not know what was going to happen. I remember one night I ended up on beside the train tracks in Wimbledon, and somebody like helped me not fall onto the tracks, and I was like, I could have died there.
Yeah.
Like, I literally could have died. Or I would wake up in random flats with random people and not remember how I'd got there. And thankfully nothing bad happened to me in those situations. I never got into the wrong car. For some reason, I was, protected in that way. I usually found people who wanted to help me rather than hurt me. But I started getting too scared to go out, so I was just staying in, and that led to, when I was 33, the absolute clincher, which is when I started trying to quit altogether, was I started researching suicide, like painless ways to commit suicide.
Right.
And I came across this webpage which said it was like created by somebody whose loved one had committed suicide, and it was like, don't do it, seek help, please look, call someone now. So I called my dad and I was like, I'm in trouble with drinking. And he said, I know. And he got on a plane the next morning and came and got me.
Oh, bless him.
Yeah.
But amazing that you reached out. I mean, that's what we talk about a lot, is like something in you
Yeah.
wanted to make that
It's
phone
like,
call.
you want to save yourself. But I want to make it clear that was not my day one. Like, what followed was 6 months of really gnarly stopping and starting and stopping and starting. And actually 6 months is quite short. Like, a lot of people, it's a lot longer. I think I've read that the average is about 4 years,
Right.
where you start trying to quit and then you actually quit. Now, my stopping and starting was really dramatic. I mean, it was like, mad benders. So it was very concentrated, that 6 months. But yeah, it never happens like that. Nobody just gets to their day one, first off. They just don't.
Yeah.
So it takes a little while to obviously get through and start working things out, right?
Yeah.
And being like, I mean, we talked about it, like, why were we so fucked up? It was like happening so much. Like, Jesus. Like, I feel like I was dealt a pretty good like hand in life, and still drinking uncontrollably. So you have to tackle that stuff. So what was your day one?
My day one was the day after I realised, and like I said, it was completely invisible. There was no drama, nothing like that. But I just realised one day, I was like, I am going to die of this if I continue. And it might be something really uneventful. Like, it might be in a couple of decades, I get cirrhosis or something like that. Or it might be something dramatic where I do fall onto the train tracks, like that person isn't there to stop me. Or it might be me getting into the wrong car. Like, I don't know how it's going to happen, but I could see so clearly then that it was going to cause my untimely death. And because I'd had, and this is really important as well, because I'd had those patches of sobriety where I'd started to feel good and like myself again, and the shame had started to recede, those like 1 day, 3 days, 7 days, 14 days, had provided the self-esteem that I needed to say, I am worth saving. Like, I want to save my own life. Even though to everyone around me, it doesn't look like, the only people who thought that I should definitely quit drinking were my parents, a couple of family members, and my best mate. Everyone else was like, you're not that bad. Come on, Kath. Like, take 6 months off. But that is so often the case, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's so often the case that whenever you want to quit drinking, or you tell people that you're trying to quit drinking, you don't actually get the support you need, because people want you to carry on, so they've still got their drinking buddy, or something about it's all about their drinking rather than your drinking. Now that is starting to change, thank God. But it's still a struggle to get that support. So yeah, that was it. It was very uneventful, my day one. It was just that 0.01%.
I love that though, because I'm almost picturing visually like you just being in this dark tunnel, and then at some point in one of those 1 days or 3 days, 7 days, just a little light at the end of the tunnel flickering, and you just kind of following it and where you are now, which I think is really nice, because so many people don't have that. But the thing about the friends is really interesting, because we talk about this a lot, don't we? That like, yeah, friends see sobriety often as reflective on themselves, and it's really not. Like, if you've got a mate that's struggling and you still drink, you should just think about them in that scenario and what's best for them, not like, oh, you know, you'll be all right, you're fine, because people do just want a reason I know there's so many times I should have stopped, and my friends I know factually would have been like, oh yeah, but Jamie's fun, or Jamie will buy the drugs, or Jamie will like make it fun. You're almost just I always say it, like one of my friends in particular was always used as like a puppet, because they were like, oh, they were the fun one when they're out. It's really fucked up.
Yeah.
It is.
I was definitely the fun one. I was the one that people came invite to the party, because I would get everyone on the dance floor and sort of, I don't know, like it was just. And have you seen that Friends episode with Fun Bobby?
Yeah.
and so when I quit, I felt like I was Fun Bobby. I felt like I was like the drag, the one that nobody wanted at the party now. I mean, that was something that followed me around for a while, until I realised that that's bullshit. Like you're still just as fun.
Yeah.
It's just a different kind of fun. Like, you're not gonna be providing free coke.
Yeah. And also, like, I think I've certainly found from my experience that like the overwhelming majority of my friends have been nothing but supportive. And then there's probably a very small handful who have probably spent less time with me, and I've probably spent less time with them. Because I think, you know, for some people, I probably am like a walking mirror. You know, and they probably
lovely mirror at that, though, mate.
Thank you, mate. That's very kind. But yeah, you know, I think for some people, we always say like, you know, they have to come to their own conclusions, right? So
yeah.
And you know, it is what it is. You can't always hold on to everyone, especially when through sobriety, not everyone's going to be good for you to be around, and you kind of do realize what's important to you, right?
Yeah.
So it's
Absolutely.
interesting. How did that first like month, 3 months, 6 months go for you? What were the kind of challenges you found?
Oh, well, I mean, I was living with my parents. I moved back there to get sober. So I did a lot of running. Like, I still do a lot of running. I run every day with my dog. And that just helped me so much to sort of rid myself of that cortisol, that you know what it's like. Well, for me, I was physically addicted. Like, even though people say comparatively I wasn't drinking that much, the effect that it was having on my body, I was drinking 7 or 8 bottles of wine a week. And whenever I do articles and I mention that, I get in the comments, oh my God, that's nothing, you know, but that is something.
Yeah.
Like, that's 70 or 80 units a week. That's anything over 50 units is considered life endangering. So that's a lot of booze.
Yeah.
And it really, it really affected me. So I had to physically recover. I had the shakes. I couldn't eat for the first few days. I was really, really ill. I couldn't sleep. So I had to like go through that physical withdrawal. I didn't need medication to go through it. A lot of people do, but I didn't. And I just sort of did it holistically, and it worked. But it was so hard the first 30 days. But then you get these moments that like pierce the gloom, where it's like euphoric and you're running and there's birds singing and you're like, oh my God, I feel so good today. Or you wake up and you're like, I don't have anything to piece together from last night. I don't have to like look at my phone to see what stupid text I sent, or
With the fear.
Yeah. Yeah. One of my friends used to delete the text that she sent when she was drunk so that she couldn't see them in the morning.
Christ.
And I was like, oh God.
Genius.
I'd rather actually...
No, I think I'd have more fear doing that.
Yeah. Yeah, imagine.
Yeah.
Like, all the things that she said that she doesn't know about. But anyway, yeah, it was really tough. I mean, I always say to people that the first 30 days is the hardest, and it absolutely is. But you just need to get through it, and one foot in front of the other, and it's so worth it.
Yeah, that's amazing. So let's talk about your journey from there, because it's been quite something. So sobriety, I am assuming, got better. and you were feeling good in
Yeah.
yourself. What kind of led you onto the journey? Because obviously you'd worked in magazines and media before, so kind of what was the journey into being an author and creating, and how did you find the sober space at the time? Because we were talking downstairs about how much the sober space has evolved.
Yeah, it's changed so much. I mean, this was 2013 when I got sober, and there wasn't really much out there. There was sort of, you know, the Alan Carrs and the Jason Vales and the Annie Graces, who were much more about person with addiction rather than person as addiction. And I really gravitated towards those narratives. I went to AA for 6 months, decided it wasn't for me. I didn't gel with it, although I did learn a lot there. I've got a lot of time for AA. But I wanted to sort of feel free and feel empowered, and so I went for narratives that felt like that. But there was hardly anything out there. There was about 3 podcasts, you know, there was hardly anything. And sober celebrities were thin on the ground. Hardly anyone was out. And it just feels completely different now. So I'm so happy that things are changing. And also, when you told people that you weren't drinking anymore, it was the reaction was either disgust, which was like you told them that you've decided to start clubbing baby seals in your spare time. Like, oh,
fuck those seals.
God. Or pity.
Yeah.
Like real pity. Like, oh my God, oh, you poor thing. Do you mind me drinking? You know, can you still go to parties? I was asked that. Can you still go to pubs? You know, just absolute, like, you've committed social suicide. Just you've done the worst possible thing for your social life. And yeah, it couldn't be more different now, the sober space. So I'm really happy about that. And I'm really happy that people have, you know, things like this to listen to.
I know, it's amazing. We feel really grateful, don't we, to kind of, we didn't know, genuinely didn't know any of this existed. Like when I stopped, my friend sent me Alan Carr's book. That was quite helpful, and I didn't know anything else. And then it was only when we started this, it was like, holy shit. It's like opening a door.
Yeah.
Pandora's box, and there's just this like whole world that we've just like been so grateful to A, embrace, and B, be embraced by.
Yeah, and also the people that, in my head, that would have almost had that kind of like judgment of like sobriety just doesn't really exist. I mean, we talked about it. I went on a mate's stag do a few weeks ago to Albufeira, and it was like I'm really good mates with him, but it was like I'm not in his group. And they're very much like your typical kind of lads, love football. And I was like, this isn't like my mainframe group. And I was a bit nervous going into it, being like, shit, how's it going to go? And everyone was like so chill and actually way more curious, and like kind of like almost one by one at certain points over the weekend would be like, yeah, it's almost like being sober, like things like very like curious about it and approaching it with curiosity rather than judgment, which is like refreshing. And I think that's what like a lot of people seem to be people's approaches now, rather than being like you said, maybe 10 years ago, like, what's wrong with you?
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, I'm so happy to hear that. And there was also a really weird reaction when I got sober, where as soon as you told people that you didn't drink, they would defend their drinking. They would give you like a mini TED talk about their drinking. Like, I only drink at the weekends, and I only drink fine wines, and I only drink for the taste. And
I only drink fine wines from yard glasses out of a horn.
I only drink on horseback.
We're all very
My
cool
liege.
personalities. It was really weird, and I was just like, I don't like. Okay, good for you. Like, that's great.
You do you, boo.
Yeah. But why are you telling me all this?
Yeah, people.
But
do
it's
really
like you said,
project.
you're a walking mirror. People feel judged, or they feel scrutinized by your non-drinking. And I'm so happy now that has changed from sort of defense to curiosity. And that just shows how much more vulnerable people are about their drinking. And I mean, a lot of problem drinking was birthed in lockdowns, so I think there's going to be a lot more people come to the sober space now as well, so that's really good.
That's great.
I was a lockdown sesher.
You were.
Yeah,
you
big time.
basically put a club in your
I
house.
bought a fucking smoke. My best mate, I was living on my own. My best mate broke up with his partner. I was like, move in. I don't want to be on my own. Fuck me. Like smoke machine, lasers, decks, like drugs by the hour. It was so much fun, but not good. I came out of lockdown, but I came out like so
Only to
anxious.
what I imagine Pablo Escobar's like house to be like.
It was like this. No, it was real, but it was that thing again, like the introversion of then when the world opens up.
Yeah.
Because when you've done that on your own, and all right, it was maybe fun for a few months. A, it's not sustainable, and B, like the big wide world is very scary, and I was not ready for that.
Oh God.
Yeah, it was wild time of life. So, Unexpected Joy of Being Sober is 7 years old.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Exactly right.
So, talk to us about that. What made you go, I'm going to do this?
Wow, I started writing it when I was really newly sober, and I was going to write it under some sort of pseudonym, like, I don't know, Alice Green or something like that.
Right.
And then the more and more sober I got, the more and more I didn't care anymore.
Yeah.
And the more sober you are, the more the shame recedes. And I've been told by so many people that I was brave writing that book. And I was like, do you know what? I don't feel brave. I just feel like I'm so relieved to be honest.
Yeah.
Because I lied for so many years. I had to tell lies to protect my drinking for so many years, to, you know, get out of getting into trouble for infidelities and food poisoning that was made out. Like, I used to have to write down my lies. There were so many of them, to sort of keep a hold of the framework of them so that they didn't like come to devour me. Yeah. And so it didn't feel like bravery. It felt just like a letting go. And so by the time I published that book, I was 4 years sober. And I was like, do you know what? Let's just do away with the pseudonym, because I'm more than happy to like stand in
comfortable in your own skin.
Yeah, but I did take 10% off the top. So one of my first readers, Kate, she won't mind me saying her name, she was like, Kat, do you have to reveal everything?
You're like, maybe not.
Yeah, she was like, I think you can take 10%, like the gnarliest 10%. Take that off the top and just keep that for yourself and like tell your mates. And so I did that. So there's darker stories, there's wilder stories that are in that book. But yeah, I'm so glad that I published it, and it healed me. Like, it really helped me writing it. And I've heard from so many people as well, like they've told me their stories, like they've shared really personal, really intimate things with me, and I just feel so honoured that they do that. Yeah. So it's been so lovely.
I think that's such a beautiful thing about doing what you did, and it's almost like we were talking downstairs about this as well. Like, this podcast success is a byproduct of actually just having open communication that's so healing to us. Mm-hmm. So I think it's so beautiful what you've done, and I'm sure like having an international best-selling book is lovely, but actually the healing process for you and what that brought you probably far outweighs any successes of the book, right?
Oh, 100%. I mean, but I didn't, nobody expected the book to be a success. I met with one agent who told me that nobody would buy a book with sober in the title. She wanted me to write a totally different book. So everyone assumed it was going to be quite a niche book and sell to, you know, maybe a few thousand people. So it completely out. But I think it just hit at the exact right time when sober curiosity was beginning to become a thing. Yeah. And it just so happened to hit at that time, which was not by any sort of design. It was just a total coincidence. But yeah, it's amazing that it's reached as many people as it has.
So cool. You should be so proud. It's amazing.
I think we should delve into your newest book.
Okay.
Your first fiction novel, is that correct?
That's right, yeah.
So yeah, talk to us. What was the inspiration behind this?
Okay, so it's called Versions of a Girl.
Mm-hmm.
And I wrote it when I was pregnant, and coming back to some of that stuff that we talked about, you know, having a kid and being so scared that you're gonna like watch them become a mini you. I was obsessed with nature versus nurture and all of the stuff about how our dominant parent like shapes who we become. So it's kind of like sliding doors meets atonement.
Nice.
Because there's parallel storylines. So we open on this 14-year-old girl. She's been parented equally by both parents. Her parents are very, very different. One's a narcissist, one's neglectful, means well. One's a drinker, one just takes diazepam. One's, you know, rich, one's poor, one's in California, one's in London. They're just very, very different. And then the story splits, and she continues to be raised by each version of her parents, and we watch how that shapes her and how she unfolds. And it was based on everything that I was reading and obsessed with when I was pregnant, and just, yeah, that nature versus nurture interplay. I'm just so interested in it. So, and there's lots of addiction in there and recovery. but in many different shapes. Like both versions of her get addicted to things, but different things. They recover in different ways as well.
Addiction is something that, because we're exploring this a little further on in this series, aren't we, around like sex addiction and porn addiction, because we were talking to Fat Tony and he was saying that he was 6 years sober from alcohol and drugs, but then still had infidelity. And that is actually what he realized was probably his biggest addiction, was in sex. And then it wasn't until he dealt with that he truly felt sober.
Yeah.
And I think addiction can play out in so many ways. And Ali Bailey, another one of our guests, said like, addicts are master manipulators, and we don't realize you're doing it a lot of the time. A bit like you were saying with your lies, right? So I think that's a really interesting premise of like the journey of addiction and how that can be nurtured or nurtured. Because I think growing up for me, like knowing that I was the child of an addict, but I didn't live with that parent, or I wasn't really around it too much. You're always like, yeah, never, never, never. But like you say, like certain tendencies are there, and it's how you follow them, or if they're exacerbated.
They can go either way. I mean, I think it's true, and I have to ask myself quite a lot of the time, am I being manipulative here? And I have to be like, okay, that's the manipulative choice, I can't even say it, and this is the non-manipulative choice. So I have to be like, I'm going to do that one, like the straightforward, because I'm so used to it. It's so entrenched in my personality, because you almost need it when you're addicted, because how else do you survive? Like otherwise you would just lose everything. You would lose all your friends, all your family, all your jobs. So you need to manipulate and lie to sort of survive. But what's also true is that in order to survive an addiction, you have to have the most grit and like ability to withstand pain, because there is so much pain on the flip side of that. Everyone thinks of addiction as like chasing pleasure, and it is, but it's also the ability to tolerate pain. And so that kind of all or nothing, go hard or go home, like streak to the personality can be funneled in so many positive ways, and it can become, you know, workaholism. I've definitely been a workaholic before, but it depends how it grows, and it depends where you are and what your environment is and how it's watered as to where it goes. So yeah, that's basically the nugget of the book.
That's what I was going to say. Was that the journey? Was it interesting writing about addiction from a fictitious space, having written from a non-fictitious space before? Like, did you bring personal journeys into it, or was it your chance to be like, fuck, I'm going to research this and just go ham on the journey? Or sort of, is there some Catherine hidden in Fern?
Oh, of course there is. Of course there is. Come on, what are you talking about? Yeah. I mean, it's basically the 10% that I skimmed up.
There it is. There it is.
And here we go.
I couldn't write about that before. Now I'm just gonna like put different names on it.
This is the pseudonym.
Alice.
No, you're revealing all your secrets now.
No. It's not auto-fiction. It's not true. Like, I've never lived in California. I've never stolen a car. But it is true on a granular level. Like, and that's what I discovered. The first draft I had to completely scrap because it was shit, because I just made stuff up. And then I realised that in order for the fiction to be good, it has to have that truth to it. Like, you have to capture the way a person made you feel. You have to capture the core of like people you've met and things you've seen that you've been like, oh, that was really weird. And it has to be true on a granular level, even if it's untrue on like a structural level. It has to be true. So yeah, there's lots of truth in there, just not in the way you think.
Amazing.
I'm really looking forward to getting into it, because like I said, I've been here, there and everywhere, and all my kind of at home. It's been delivered, opened with the other books, and then my wife has picked it up and been reading it, and I haven't actually had a clue. And then she's been like, I'm really into this book, and I was like, holy shit, it's your book. And has drawn a lot of parallels to her life and it with her, you know, her parents living in different parts of the world and the rest of it. So cool. I'm really looking forward to doing it. I'm trying to like build more reading space into my life, because I'm sure you can probably relate as a parent.
Yeah,
you have these like windows of time where it's there, and like my biggest thing and challenge in life is balance, because my work is nuts at the moment, and actually trying to like build more time into like for family life and then actually downtime. So Sunday evening reading is like my thing now that I'm trying to build into, because I really loved reading growing up as a kid and I haven't done enough of it. So it's first up. So,
I love that.
Yeah, it's going to be
You've got to
good.
make it a ritual. I've discovered that I only get like an hour to myself at the end of the day. We're probably putting loads of people off parenting. But
I don't have kids I know of, so yeah.
I have to choose between TV and reading. And mostly during the week now I choose reading, and then at the weekend I choose TV.
That's nice.
And that has like reclaimed my reading. But for a long while, I like the first year of parenting, I read about 2 books, and they were audiobooks.
Yeah, it certainly becomes a challenge.
I was going to say, what's your plan next? Is there more books on the horizon?
Yeah,
is
I'm under
Fern going to grow?
contract to write another.
There you go.
Fern's going to grow.
Yeah.
I like that. Yeah. I mean, I don't know what the second book is going to be because I haven't talked to my editor. I've got an idea, but I haven't cleared it with my editor, so I probably can't say. But there's going to be another fiction, and well, I'm excited to write it.
That's
I'm
amazing.
going to write it later.
Wait,
this
what's
year.
the exact shelf date of this? When's it out?
It's 4th of July, so it'll probably already be out when this
I was going to
comes out.
say, this is. I'd love to make you guest 1 of season 4, which I think is scheduled for around
then.
the 4th of July. I think we're talking the 4th of the 11th.
Yeah.
So there we go. This might be your book
Perfect.
coming out date. Well, maybe we make that work.
4th of the 7th.
4th of the 7th.
Yeah.
There you go.
So
That'd be
yeah,
great.
so if it is, go and buy it.
Go
Yeah.
and bloody buy it.
It's called
Yeah.
Versions of a Girl.
Oh, question.
Yeah.
Have you done your own audiobook version of this?
No, because I cannot do voices to save my life. And like I said before, even though I'm Irish, I can't even do an Irish accent. Like, what is that all about? So we've got a really talented actress to do it. She's called Maeve Smith, and she's fucking amazing.
Amazing.
So yeah, she can.
Because I've tried to listen to some audiobooks where the author probably shouldn't have narrated their own book. I won't lie, and I found it really difficult because I
Yeah.
do like some, like I know I wouldn't be very good at narrating a book. So I'm like, obviously, I think having talked to you on the podcast, I think you would have been just fine. But some audiobooks I've listened to have been like, the person's it's just impossible.
Yeah,
Yeah.
well,
Really
I
put me
have
off.
done 4 of them. So I did all my non-fiction. And I'll tell you what, newfound respect for anyone who does it, because it's so fucking hard.
You just sat there literally reading it
Yeah.
chapter by chapter.
For 7 hours. It's like reading
Wow.
a 7-hour bedtime story, and you do it for 4 days. And if you fluff anything at all, obviously you have to reread it. I got laryngitis twice. So now, I try and avoid it if I can, because it's really hard work.
I bet it is. I mean, I really don't like the sound of my own voice, so I rarely listen to the podcast back before it goes live, and then I'll listen to the live one that's been edited and pieced together. But I still sit there and grimace. And then same when I'm like songwriting and you're on voice notes and we're like, oh, let's go back and listen to that, and then I hear my voice and I'm like, what? And it's me going, I don't like that bit. Do that? And I'm like, do I really sound like that? Fuck. But yeah, it must be an acquired skill. So yeah, well done for doing any. I think it might be time.
Time for the big 3.
Time for the big 3.
Oh.
So yeah, the end of each episode with a guest, we ask 3 questions. I will take the first 2, and Jamie will do the big
glory
question. So question 1, for anyone that's going or thinking about going on a journey of sobriety, what would your best piece of advice be?
Exercise. It's the number one thing. And also it shows that it helps your brain recover from alcohol, like heavy drinking. So for me, it's my number one tool. Like, I use it the most, and it just takes the edge off my anxiety, because I'm such an anxious bear, and it takes the edge off my irritation as well. And I think those 2 things, anxiety and irritation, are probably the things that drove my drinking. Like,
Right.
I drank to medicate anxiety, and I drank at people quite a lot. So that's something that I would really recommend. Like, get your trainers on, get moving, get swimming, whatever. Yeah.
Great.
Nice.
It's great
I love that.
piece of advice.
I agree. I've just got back in. So I ran the marathon last year, and then I was like, fuck that. And I barely ran for like 10 months, and I've just got back into it.
You're back on the hype, aren't you?
Mate, I'm like every morning, 6 a.m. or 6:30 a.m, 5K, and it's like already I can feel the weight.
Yeah.
Like, not physical weight, like the mental weight is just lifting.
Yeah, it really somehow declutters your brain. I don't know why, but it works. So yeah.
Exercise. I love it. Question 2, what is the biggest gift that sobriety has given you?
Do you know what it is? It's the luxury of a clean conscience. It's that, because I was frequently doing things that were very immoral, or go against my principles, like lying, cheating, you know, all that stuff. And now I don't do any of that. And it just feels so good to be able to like put my head on the pillow and know that I haven't done anything that completely flouts my principles that day.
It's great.
I really relate to that, because that was always the hard thing of like, everyone's like, oh, you're such a nice guy. And I was like, I've never done anything to maliciously hurt people, but I know I've hurt so many people in my chaos mode.
Yeah.
So I fully relate to that.
That's great.
Question 3. We would love Catherine now to write drunk Catherine a letter. So if you could start, Dear Catherine, what would you say to your
Dear
12
Catherine.
to 30-year-old self?
Oh my gosh, that's what, the 13-year-old?
No, well, whichever drunk version you would like to write to.
That you'd like to chat to.
All right. I'm going to say, Dear Catherine, this is not who you are. This is not who you will be. Things will be better, but I'm not going to give you any advice to tell you to do things differently, because things need to unfold as they are unfolding. That's it.
I love that.
That's great.
That's amazing.
That's really good. Well, thank you so much for coming and joining us
Yeah,
today.
you've been like
It's
one
been
of
a
our
pleasure.
like number one guest aims since we started this.
Yeah.
So it's like a
Oh.
real pleasure and a privilege to have you on.
And what a
So thank
season
you.
4 opener.
Season 4 opener,
love
and fucking go and buy this bad boy right now. Versions of a girl.
Versions.
But yeah, no, honestly, thank you so much. Like, it means a lot, and your journey's amazing, and I think so inspirational to anyone, because you've gone on and created an incredible brand for yourself, which is mind-blowing.
And helping a lot of people. So yeah.
Well, I will do anything you want me to in future. I'll do a live show. I'll do whatever you want.
There you go. You heard it here
Yes.
first.
Perfect.
Brixton Academy, we're coming for you.
Yeah,
no.
let's do it.
Amazing.
Perfect.
Thank you so much.
Oh, it's been a pleasure.